Hey, what's going on everybody? Today is Saturday, April 24th. My name is Ryan, I'm a CPA, and today I'm going to be talking about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. But of course, before we start, no video is complete without me begging for your approval. So if you could, please smash that like button, I would really appreciate it. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing to my channel as I'm trying to be as helpful as possible during this pandemic. Alright, so what is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund? It is a program that has been set in place by one of the most recent bills that have been passed. It's going to be ran by the SBA, and it's going to be focusing on restaurants, bars, lounges, saloons, bakeries, that kind of industry there. Okay? So what is the maximum amount of money you can get from this grant? And it is a grant. You don't have to pay it back as long as you spend the money on eligible expenses, kind of like the PPP. The maximum you can get is $10 million, okay? So basically you get $5 million per physical location, if you have multiple locations, that kind of thing, up to a maximum of $10 million. The SBA says they're going to be targeting priority groups to allow them to apply and receive funding first, and those priority groups are restaurants/businesses that are at least 51% owned by women, veterans, people of social disadvantage, and people of economic disadvantage. Social disadvantage, they're talking about people who have been discriminated against, whether they're based on race, ethnicity, their culture, that kind of thing. The first 21 days of when the program starts, the priority funding will go to those groups of people. Alright, so what is the funding amounts? How can you calculate the funding amounts? Well, like I said before, it's $5 million per location, per physical location, up to a maximum of $10 million per entity. And so how you calculate your grant amount will be based on three things, okay? First, if your business or restaurant or bar or whatever it is has been in business since all of 2019, then you would calculate your funding amount by taking your 2019 gross revenue, subtracting your 2020 gross revenue, and then subtracting any PPP loans that you have received in the meantime, okay? Once you get through all those things, that is your grant amount. Pretty simple calculation. Okay, so what if your business or restaurant started in the middle of 2019? How do you calculate that? You would take your average monthly revenue, multiply it by 12 to annualize it, and then the same thing, subtract your 2020 revenue, subtract your PPP loan amounts. What happens if your business began between January 1st, 2020 and March 15th, 2020? Well, that's a whole different calculation, okay? What you would do there is you would take your money that you spent on eligible expenses starting from February 15th, 2020, all the way to March 11th, 2021. Take your total money spent on eligible expenses, and I'll talk about that later, what the eligible expenses are, okay? Take that money spent there, subtract your 2020 revenue, subtract your 2021 revenue through March 11th, 2021, and that's how you get that funding amount. Pretty straightforward calculations, can be very high dollar, depending on how much revenue you made in 2019 versus how much you didn't make in 2020. So as you can see, this could be a very high dollar fund, which is great for restaurants who really need it. Okay, so the eligible expenses that I talked about, what are they? I have a list right here, so I'll read them off. It's going to be payroll. You can actually use the money on loan payments. You can use it on rent, utilities, maintenance. You can use it to construct or purchase things to create outdoor seating, as that is kind of an important thing during this pandemic. There's supplies you can buy, food or beverage, inventory, materials, and then any general operating expenses. You can use this money for all those things, okay? Some things that I thought of that you shouldn't use this money for is owner distributions or owner draws, owner personal expenses, new fixed assets. It's not listed in that list as eligible expenses, so definitely not new fixed assets. How does this program interact with other programs that the SBA has? That's a good question. So obviously the PPP loan affects the funding amount that you get from this program, so that's how it interacts with the PPP loans. If you apply for the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, you will not be eligible for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is a whole different grant, and I'll probably make another video to talk about that in the future, okay? And then obviously if you apply for this grant, this RRF, you can still apply for the EIDL loan. So how do you go about applying for this thing? Well, the SBA just recently released guidance, which is everything I'm telling you today. There has not been a set date on when they will open this program yet. Some are speculating May 1st. I am not going to say anything because I have no freaking idea, okay? So some speculate May 1st. How do you apply? Well, the SBA is going to have an online portal that you can use, kind of like the EIDL, that you can apply through. If you hit up the SBA website, it's going to have a sample application form that they probably are planning on using, and I'll include the link directly to the SBA site in the description below, okay? And then also restaurants approved POS providers will be helping people with these applications. Yeah, so who are those people? Those are companies like Clover, Square, NCR, and Toast. These are point of sales providers that have been approved by restaurants. These companies will be helping you folks apply for this funding as well, okay? And the SBA is partnering up with those guys. So pretty, somewhat exciting news here for the RRF. I'm hoping, to answer more questions as they arise, kind of like when the PPP and the EIDL first was born, there were some general guidelines that seemed very clear, but then once you get into the nuances of things, there's more and more questions and guidance that need to be issued. So I will be looking forward to being there along the way as this program opens up, and trying to help answer any questions. Probably make a video on the application process and all that. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. So what are the required documents that the SBA is looking for this program? First, they're gonna look for the signed 4506T. That's a request for a transcript from the IRS to make sure you're filing your taxes accurately and as you report them. They're gonna look for financial statements, bank statements, profit and loss statements, that kind of thing. They're gonna look for your tax returns, obviously. So those are the kinds of documents that you should be making sure you have when you apply for this grant, okay? That's all I got for today. Thanks for joining me. Again, if you're new here, I'd love it if you consider subscribing to my channel, and please help me feel validated by hitting that like button, all right? Take care for now, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next week.
I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up. She picture perfect, so I told him I'm a flick up.